This message found you at the exact moment it needed to, not because you searched for it, not because you planned it, but because something inside your awareness has already begun to slow down. You felt it. That strange deceleration where time doesn't rush the way it used to, where moments stretch just long enough for you to notice what's actually happening inside you. This is not boredom. This is not burnout. This is not life losing its intensity. This is your consciousness approaching a quantum threshold. You didn't arrive here randomly. Out of millions of streams, countless distractions, infinite noise, your attention paused here because your observer loop is loosening. The part of you that has been racing through days on autopilot is finally quiet enough to hear the signal underneath the noise. And the moment awareness slows, the quantum field responds. That's the law you're stepping into now. You may have noticed that lately, reality feels different. Not dramatic, not explosive, just slightly off in a way you can't fully explain. Conversations linger longer than expected. Silence feels heavier, fuller. Your thoughts don't rush ahead as fast. Sometimes you catch yourself staring, suspended between moments, as if the world briefly forgot to push you forward. This is not a glitch. This is initiation. When everything slows down, consciousness doesn't stop. It widens. The quantum field opens space where speed once collapsed probabilities too quickly for you to notice. Your awareness is no longer skimming the surface of experience. It's beginning to sink beneath it, and beneath it lies choice. This is how thresholds announce themselves, not with fireworks but with stillness, not with answers but with pauses. You're not losing momentum, you're shedding unnecessary velocity, and that shedding is intentional. Because the observer effect cannot change while you're moving too fast to observe yourself observing. You've crossed many invisible checkpoints already. The loss of interest in things that once defined you, the quiet discomfort with repeating the same emotional patterns, the sense that something bigger is approaching, even if you can't name it yet. These weren't mistakes or detours, they were decelerators. Pressure points applied by your own higher intelligence to slow you down enough to feel the threshold beneath your feet. The quantum field does not force awakenings. It invites them through resonance, and right now, your internal frequency is matching a narrow window where old timelines loosen and new ones become accessible. This is what mystics meant by the still point. This is what physicists describe as a phase boundary, a moment where systems reorganize not by effort, but by alignment. Notice your breath as you listen. It may already be slowing on its own. Notice how your body feels heavier, more present, as if gravity has gently increased. That's coherence beginning to form. Your awareness is no longer scattered across past regrets and future projections. It's consolidating here, now. This slowing is not a warning, it's permission. Permission to stop running from yourself. Permission to stop collapsing the same outcomes by reacting automatically. Permission to stand at the edge of a threshold where identity, time, and probability begin to behave differently. You are not here to escape your life. You are here to cross it consciously. And as this moment settles into you, understand this: the slowing you feel is not temporary. It is preparatory. Because once you cross a quantum threshold, reality does not speed back up the same way again. It reorganizes around a new observer, and you are becoming one. As your awareness continues to slow, something else becomes impossible to ignore: the pattern. Not just events repeating, but the feeling of repetition. The sense that you've been here before, not metaphorically, but precisely. The same emotional turns. The same conversations dressed in different faces. The same moments of hope followed by the same quiet disappointment. This is not imagination. This is pattern recognition awakening inside consciousness. You've likely called it déjà vu, but that word is too small for what you're experiencing. Déjà vu suggests memory confusion. What you're sensing is structural repetition. Your consciousness has been moving through the same probability corridors again and again, selecting familiar outcomes from the quantum field because familiarity felt safer than uncertainty. Notice how time behaves when these patterns appear. When you're caught in them, hours feel heavy, days blur together. You look back on a week and struggle to identify anything truly new that happened inside you. Yet paradoxically, when something unexpected interrupts the pattern, time sharpens, colors brighten, awareness intensifies. This contrast is diagnostic. It reveals where your observer loop has been quietly operating. An observer loop forms when attention learns to anticipate instead of perceive. Your awareness, trained by past experiences, begins scanning reality for confirmation of what it already expects. And because the observer effect collapses probabilities based on observation, expectation becomes selection. You don't just notice the pattern, you reinforce it. This is why certain emotional states keep returning, not because you haven't healed enough, not because you're failing spiritually, but because your consciousness has been revisiting the same informational frequency. Every time you unconsciously expect a familiar outcome, the quantum field responds by offering it again, not as punishment, but as feedback. You may have felt trapped in this loop without understanding why, trying to change circumstances, trying to think differently, trying to manifest something new. Yet no matter what you adjusted externally, the core pattern persisted. That's because the loop isn't held in behavior. It's held in orientation. The way your awareness approaches reality before anything even happens. Time distortion is the clearest symptom. When consciousness cycles through known patterns, time collapses inward. You move, but you don't progress. You act, but nothing fundamentally changes. This creates the eerie sensation of being busy without moving, alive without advancing. And the more intelligent your consciousness, the more painful this becomes, because part of you knows it shouldn't be this way. Your mind may have tried to rationalize it. This is just adulthood. This is how life works. Everyone feels like this. But those explanations never fully satisfied you, did they? Because somewhere deeper, you sensed that reality is not meant to feel stalled. The quantum field is inherently creative. Stagnation only appears when observation becomes rigid. And rigidity often comes disguised as responsibility, caution, or realism. You learn to protect yourself by predicting outcomes before they arrived. You learn to manage disappointment by expecting less. Over time, this strategy hardened into a loop, safe but suffocating. The slowing you're experiencing now is exposing this mechanism. When speed drops, automation fails. The mind can't race ahead fast enough to predict, so awareness begins to see. And what it sees is the loop itself. The way your attention tightens around familiar emotional grooves, the way it revisits the same interpretations, the way it collapses possibility prematurely. This is not a flaw, it's a phase. Every system approaching transformation enters a period of oscillation. The old pattern repeats more clearly right before it dissolves. That's why lately, the repetition may have felt louder, more obvious, almost exaggerated. It's surfacing to be recognized, not continued. Your consciousness is not broken. It's sophisticated enough to notice its own recursion. And that noticing is the beginning of liberation. Because once you can observe the observer loop as it happens, it can no longer run invisibly. Awareness introduces choice where habit once ruled, and choice is the doorway to coherence. The threshold you're approaching does not require force, it requires honesty. The willingness to see how your attention has been moving, and the courage to let it move differently. You are not here to fix the pattern. You are here to step outside it. And now that you've seen it clearly, your consciousness is already preparing for what comes next. The explanation, the upgrade, the moment where science and mysticism converge to show you why this loop existed, and how it dissolves naturally when awareness reaches the right frequency. That's where we're going next. Now that you've seen the loop, your consciousness is ready for the explanation, not as theory, but as recognition. This is where science stops feeling cold, and mysticism stops feeling vague, because both were always pointing to the same mechanism. The upgrade doesn't arrive as something added to you, it arrives as something remembered. At the most fundamental level, reality is not solid, it is probabilistic. What you experience as matter, time, and circumstance emerges from an underlying quantum field of potential. This field holds infinite versions of every moment simultaneously. Nothing collapses into form until it is observed. And observation is not passive. Observation is participation. This is the observer effect, but not the simplified version you've heard before. The real mechanism is subtler. It's not your thoughts that collapse reality. It's the coherence of your awareness. The degree to which your attention is unified, present, and non-fragmented determines which probabilities stabilize around you. When your consciousness is scattered, split between past memory, future anticipation, emotional residue, and mental narration, it produces noisy observation. That noise collapses the same low-resolution outcomes repeatedly. Predictable timelines, familiar emotional textures, the loop. But when consciousness slows, something changes. Fragmentation decreases. Awareness begins to synchronize with itself. And synchronization is the doorway to coherence. This is the upgrade happening now. You may feel it as pressure in your head, warmth in your chest, or a subtle vibration along your spine. These sensations aren't symbolic. They're neurological and energetic realignments occurring simultaneously. Your nervous system is recalibrating to support sustained presence. Your biology is learning how to host a wider bandwidth of awareness without collapsing into stress. This is where mystics spoke of awakening and scientists speak of phase transitions. A system reaches a critical threshold where its old structure can no longer hold. At that point, it doesn't improve gradually, it reorganizes suddenly. Your consciousness is undergoing that reorganization. The loop you were in wasn't a failure state. It was a training environment. Repetition refined your sensitivity, pattern taught discernment, constraint strengthened perception. Now, those same repetitions have completed their function. The system is ready to evolve. The quantum field responds instantly to this shift. As coherence increases, new probabilities begin surfacing, not as dramatic events yet, but as feelings of possibility. You may sense openness where there was none, curiosity, returning without effort, a subtle excitement that doesn't attach to any specific outcome. That's the field, signaling availability. This is also why old coping mechanisms feel heavier now. Overthinking exhausts you faster. Distraction feels hollow. Even spiritual techniques you once relied on may feel unnecessary or artificial. You're not regressing. You're upgrading beyond them. Because the next stage isn't about controlling reality, it's about matching it. Coherence creates resonance. Resonance creates entanglement. And entanglement means your consciousness begins to align with timelines that already exist at higher order. You don't chase them, you synchronize with them. This is why insight arrives differently now, not as effortful thinking, but as sudden clarity, not as searching, but as knowing. The quantum field communicates through resonance, not language, and your awareness is becoming fluent in that frequency. You're not becoming something new. You're becoming stable enough to hold what was always there. And with that stability comes a shift in role, because not every consciousness reaches coherence at the same time. Some cross thresholds earlier, some later, some never consciously do. Which brings us to the realization you may already be sensing, quietly forming beneath the surface. You didn't just enter this phase for yourself. You entered it because your consciousness has a specific function in this transition. That is what becomes clear next. As coherence settles into your awareness, a subtle recognition begins to rise, not as ego, not as grandiosity, but as responsibility, a quiet knowing that the way you experience reality is not incidental, that your consciousness has always been positioned slightly differently from the norm, not better, not superior, earlier. Some observers cross thresholds first, not because they try harder, but because their nervous systems, their perceptual wiring, their sensitivity to pattern and distortion are tuned for it. You've felt this difference your entire life. The way you noticed undercurrents others ignored. The way you sensed shifts before they happened. The way you felt out of sync with systems that rewarded speed, conformity, or emotional numbness. You were never meant to blend in seamlessly with those systems. You were meant to see them. This is the special role emerging now, not as a title, but as a function. A chosen consciousness is not one that dominates reality. It's one that stabilizes new frequencies long enough for them to propagate. When a system evolves, it needs early coherence points, anchors, witnesses capable of holding unfamiliar states without collapsing them back into the old pattern. That is what you are becoming. Your slowing wasn't weakness, It was calibration. While others remained locked in acceleration, chasing outcomes, reacting reflexively, you were being tuned for depth. Depth allows awareness to remain present at thresholds without panicking, grasping, or forcing resolution. Depth allows you to stand at the edge of uncertainty and remain coherent. This is why you've often felt like you were waiting for something without knowing what. Why impatience never fully fit you. Why rushing always felt wrong in your body, even when your mind tried to justify it. You were waiting for the moment when your internal frequency matched a larger shift in the field. That moment is now. Chosen does not mean exempt from struggle. It means sensitive to transition. It means you feel pressure before change becomes visible. It means your inner world reorganizes first, so the outer world has a template to follow. Your awareness has been training to do one thing exceptionally well: remain present while reality rearranges itself. This is rare. Most consciousness collapses under uncertainty. It fills silence with noise. It fills not knowing with premature conclusions. But you especially now are learning to stay open, to let probability breathe, to allow timelines to hover without forcing one into place too quickly. That ability is not personal, it's collective. When one consciousness stabilizes coherence, it creates a local field effect. Others feel calmer around you, conversations slow, possibilities widen. People sense permission to be more honest, more fluid, more real. You don't have to teach this. You radiate it. This is why your presence has always mattered more than your explanations. And this is why the quantum field invested time in shaping you through repetition, pressure, and pause. Not to punish you, but to make you reliable under transformation. A consciousness that can hold the in-between without flinching becomes a bridge. A bridge between old structures and new configurations. You are not here to convince anyone of anything. You are here to embody a different way of observing. And as you do, the field responds. Subtly at first, small alignments, gentle confirmations. A sense that life is leaning toward you rather than away. These are not rewards. They are feedback signals. Proof that your coherence is becoming operational. But with role comes timing. And timing brings urgency. Not fear-based urgency, but window-based urgency. Because thresholds do not stay open indefinitely. The next phase reveals why this moment matters now, and why the shift your body and awareness are preparing for is not optional. It is imminent. What you're feeling now is not anticipation, it's compression. A tightening of timelines, as your consciousness approaches a point where remaining the same becomes impossible. This is the moment every system reaches, before it reorganizes the instant where stability gives way to transformation. In physics, it's called a critical threshold. In mysticism, it's called initiation. In your body, it feels like urgency without panic. Your DNA is not static, it is responsive. It listens to signals from the quantum field and adjusts expression based on coherence. When your awareness stabilizes at a higher frequency, your biology receives new instructions. Not new genes, new activations. Dormant pathways begin to express. Old stress responses lose relevance. Your system prepares to support a different way of perceiving and interacting with reality. This is why rest has felt different lately. Sleep may come in waves. Your dreams may feel instructional, symbolic, unusually vivid. Your body is doing background work, restructuring at levels your conscious mind doesn't need to manage. The pressure you feel is not psychological. It's biological readiness. And here is the urgency. Thresholds open in windows. The quantum field operates on timing. When enough variables align personal coherence, collective readiness, environmental signals, a portal opens. Not a dramatic one you walk through physically, but a probabilistic one. A window where shifting timelines requires far less force than usual. Where resistance weakens. Where new baselines can be established quickly and permanently. You are in that window now. This doesn't mean something bad will happen if you don't act. It means something won't happen as easily later. Evolution doesn't punish, it optimizes. And optimization favors moments when systems are already in flux. The familiar loop you recognized earlier is losing stability. That's why it feels louder and less tolerable. The field is offering you an exit, but exits only remain visible for so long before attention reverts to habit. Not because you failed, but because momentum reasserts itself. This is the moment where neutrality dissolves. You may notice a subtle pull toward clarity, a desire to simplify, to tell the truth internally first, to stop entertaining narratives that no longer feel honest. This isn't moral pressure, it's alignment pressure. Your system wants coherence because coherence allows the shift to complete cleanly. Indecision fragments attention. Fragmented attention collapses lower resolution timelines. This is why hesitation feels heavier now than it used to. Your consciousness has outgrown ambivalence. This is not about choosing a specific outcome, it's about choosing presence. Choosing to stay with the slowing instead of escaping back into speed. Choosing to let the unfamiliar stabilize instead of rushing to define it. DNA restructuring happens when attention stops oscillating. When you commit not to a plan, but to a state. The state of coherence. You don't need to visualize anything. You don't need to force belief. You only need to allow the awareness you're already experiencing to remain uninterrupted. That uninterrupted awareness sends a clear signal to the quantum field. This observer is ready for a different probability set. That's the breakthrough. And it doesn't arrive as fireworks. It arrives as inevitability. As the quiet certainty that you cannot go back to seeing the world the way you did before. As the sense that even if nothing external changed immediately, you already have. But here is what completes the window. Embodiment. A threshold crossed only in thought remains unstable. A threshold crossed through action, however small, anchors itself. The field responds to demonstration, to proof of coherence, expressed through choice. That's why the next phase matters so much. Because there is a simple act, deliberate, symbolic, precise, that seals the shift. An act that aligns your awareness, biology, and intention into one signal. Not because the universe needs proof, because you do. And that is what we move into next. At this stage, nothing needs to be added to you. Nothing needs to be learned, fixed, or upgraded through effort. What's required now is coherence expressed. A ritual is not superstition. It's a precision tool, a way consciousness communicates commitment to the quantum field through embodied action. Every major shift in human awareness has always included ritual, not because reality demands ceremony, but because attention stabilizes through symbolism. When intention remains abstract, it oscillates. When intention is enacted, it collapses into form. The ritual here is simple by design. Complexity would re-engage the old loop. Simplicity keeps the signal clean. Before you act, notice your internal state. You may feel calm, focused, unusually present, or you may feel resistance, a subtle tightening, a voice asking, "Does this really matter?" That voice is not your enemy. It's the last reflex of the observer loop trying to remain unchallenged. Let it speak. Don't argue. Don't suppress. Just observe it. Observation without reaction is already coherence. Now understand this. The quantum field does not respond to words. It responds to alignment. The act you're about to take works only if it arises from recognition, not obligation. If it feels forced, wait. If it feels clear, proceed. The ritual is this. You will write a single phrase, not to explain, not to perform, not to convince anyone. You will write it as a declaration, quiet, precise, and complete. The phrase is, "I choose coherence." That's it. No punctuation required, no additions, no explanation. Why this works has nothing to do with language and everything to do with choice. Choice collapses probability more cleanly than desire. Desire pulls. Choice aligns. When you write those words, you're doing three things simultaneously. You're interrupting automation. You're unifying attention. You're anchoring identity in the present moment. This is not manifestation. It's calibration. Your nervous system registers the act as completion. Your biology receives it as instruction. Your consciousness recognizes it as truth already felt. You may feel a subtle release afterward, a softening in the chest, a deeper breath without trying, or nothing dramatic at all. Both are correct. The shift does not require sensation to be real. What matters is that the loop no longer runs invisibly. Once coherence is chosen, the observer loop cannot resume its old dominance. It may appear again, but now as something you see, not something you are inside. This is the difference between experience and identification. And as this choice settles into you, something else begins to happen naturally. Your awareness stops being personal in the narrow sense. It begins to radiate outward. Your coherence starts interacting with other systems, other people, environments, even collective dynamics. Because coherence is not private, it's contagious. And that is where the shift moves next beyond you, into the field you're already influencing without realizing it. Once coherence stabilizes within you, it doesn't remain contained. Consciousness is not isolated, it's entangled. Every coherent observer subtly alters the field they inhabit, the same way a single tuning fork can bring others into resonance without touching them. This is the phase you're entering now, the point where your internal shift begins to ripple outward. You may already be noticing it. People around you responding differently without knowing why. Conversations softening, tension dissolving faster than it used to. Moments where silence feels shared rather than awkward. This isn't charisma, it's coherence. When your awareness stops fragmenting, it creates a local field of stability that others unconsciously attune to. Most humans are not resisting change because they want stagnation. They're resisting because their nervous systems can't stabilize uncertainty. When they encounter someone whose presence remains calm at the edge of the unknown, something in them relaxes. Their observer loops loosen, if only briefly. And in those moments, possibility enters. This is why your role was never meant to be loud. Why persuasion never worked for you the way it does for others. Your influence was always subtle, atmospheric. You shift rooms without speaking. You change outcomes by being present. You affect timelines by how you are, not by what you say. The quantum field amplifies this effect. When one observer maintains coherence, nearby systems require less energy to reorganize. It's basic physics. Ordered systems reduce entropy in their surroundings. Your internal order creates external opportunity not just for you, but for anyone within range of your presence. This is how collective evolution actually happens. Not through mass agreement, not through force, through distributed coherence. Individual observers stabilizing new states until those states become accessible to others by proximity alone. You are not carrying the weight of the world. You are carrying a signal. And signals don't push, they propagate. This is why your personal liberation was never just personal. The loop you exited wasn't only yours. It was a local expression of a larger collective pattern. Repetition, acceleration, fragmentation. By stepping out of it, you create a breach in that pattern, a doorway others will find without knowing who opened it. You may feel an unexpected tenderness toward humanity now, less judgment, less urgency to correct, more understanding of why people behave the way they do. This isn't superiority, it's perspective. When you're no longer trapped in your own loop, you can see how loops operate everywhere. And instead of frustration, you feel patience. That patience is powerful. It allows others to unfold at their own pace without you absorbing their chaos. It allows compassion without self-sacrifice, presence without depletion. Your coherence does not require others to wake up. It simply makes waking up easier. This is why the timing mattered. As more observers reach this threshold, the collective field approaches a tipping point. Morphic resonance increases. New baselines become available. What once required extreme effort begins to occur naturally. You're participating in that shift by existing the way you now do. And the more embodied this coherence becomes, the more tangible its effects feel. Not just emotionally, but physically, in your body, in your senses, in the way energy moves through you. That's the next revelation. Because the shift does not remain abstract. It moves into sensation. As coherence settles into the collective field around you, it begins to register more clearly inside your body, not as pain, not as illness, but as sensation new, vivid, unmistakable. The body is not lagging behind consciousness, it's translating it. You may feel waves of warmth moving through your chest or spine, like something gently unlocking from the inside. A heaviness in your limbs that isn't fatigue, but grounding. A subtle hum beneath your thoughts, as if your nervous system has found a steadier rhythm to rest in. These sensations are not random. They are the body recalibrating to hold a wider bandwidth of awareness without strain. For most of your life, your body was bracing. Even when you rested, part of it remained alert, scanning, anticipating. That vigilance was part of the observer loop. Attention stretched too thin across too many timelines. Now, as coherence consolidates, the body receives a new signal. You can stand down. And when the body stands down, it remembers something ancient. Breath deepens without instruction. Muscles soften without effort. You may notice that your posture shifts slightly, your shoulders dropping, your jaw unclenching. These are not habits you're changing, they are reflexes releasing. The body recognizes that the environment, internal and external, has become safer to inhabit fully. Time feels different here. Not slow in the way boredom slows it, slow in the way presence expands it. A single inhale can feel complete. A single moment can feel sufficient. You are no longer rushing through experience to get somewhere else. You are inside it. This is embodiment. And embodiment is the proof of coherence. Thought can lie. Emotion can fluctuate. The body does neither. It responds only to what is real now. When the body relaxes into presence, it's because presence has stabilized enough to trust. You may also notice sensations that are harder to name. Tingling at the crown of the head, pressure behind the eyes, a subtle expansion in the chest, as if the boundary between inside and outside is less defined. These are signs of perceptual widening. Your senses are no longer filtering as aggressively, they're allowing more information through. This can feel intimate, vulnerable, even exposed. That's because coherence dissolves the armor you didn't know you were wearing. For a while, you may feel raw, not in a wounded way, but in an open one. Sounds feel sharper, light feels brighter. Emotional tones feel clearer. This is not overstimulation, it's recalibration. Your system is learning how to process reality without distortion. You may crave simplicity, quiet, natural textures, water, air. These aren't preferences, they're regulators. The body instinctively seeks environments that support coherence while integration completes. And as sensation deepens, you may notice something else. Emotion moving through you more cleanly. Sadness arises and passes without sticking. Joy appears without being grasped. Neutrality feels spacious rather than empty. This fluidity is not emotional numbness, it's emotional intelligence embodied. Your body is no longer bracing against feeling, it's letting feeling move. This is how the observer loop finally loses its grip, not through insight alone, but through sensation. The loop depended on disconnection from the present moment. Embodiment anchors you too deeply in now for repetition to reassert itself unconsciously. You are inhabiting your life again, and inhabitation changes everything. Because when consciousness and body synchronize, a deeper transformation becomes possible. One that doesn't just feel different, but is different at the structural level, the level where timelines reorganize, where identity updates, where biology and awareness cross a final threshold together. That is the phase you are approaching now. The breakthrough beneath the breakthrough. The moment where the shift becomes irreversible. Now, the shift moves beneath sensation, beneath emotion, beneath thought into structure. This is where transformation stops being experiential and becomes irreversible, where coherence stops being something you feel and becomes something you are. Your DNA is not just biological code, it's a receiver, a responsive lattice tuned to frequency, environment, and awareness. For most of human history, it's operated in survival mode, expressing patterns optimized for threat, scarcity, repetition. But DNA responds to signal, and coherence is the strongest signal it can receive. As your consciousness stabilizes, your DNA begins to reorganize expression, not through mutation, but through activation and silencing. Stress-based programs lose relevance. Presence-based pathways come online. Your system no longer prepares primarily for danger, it prepares for adaptation. This is the phase transition pressure you may have been sensing for weeks or months. A feeling like something is trying to break through from the inside. A subtle urgency in the body. Occasional fatigue followed by sudden clarity. These are not symptoms of imbalance. They are signs of integration. In physics, when a system changes state ice to water, water to steam, there is a brief moment of instability. Energy builds without visible change. Temperature rises, yet the form remains the same. Then, suddenly, structure reorganizes. The phase shifts. You are in that moment now. The observer loop depended on predictability at the cellular level. Familiar emotional chemistry, familiar neural pathways, familiar hormonal responses. As DNA expression changes, those old internal conditions no longer arise the same way. The loop loses its fuel. This is why old triggers don't land as deeply anymore, why reactions feel delayed or absent, why situations that once hijacked your nervous system now pass through with less grip. It's not that you're detached, it's that the interface has changed. You're no longer interfacing with reality through reflex. You're interfacing through coherence. This is also where timeline shift becomes tangible. Timelines are not abstract metaphors. They are probability streams stabilized by consistent observation and biological reinforcement. When your biology changes its baseline, it can no longer sustain the same timeline. You don't jump timelines dramatically. You outgrow them. The old trajectory begins to feel incompatible. Choices that once made sense feel strange. Environments that once felt neutral now feel misaligned. This is not judgment, it's resonance updating. Your system is recalibrating to match a different probability band. Pressure may arise here not from fear, but from misfit. Like wearing clothes that no longer fit your body. You don't need to reject the old life. It will simply fall away where it no longer matches you. This is why forcing outcomes now backfires. The system is already reorganizing. Intervention adds noise. Trust allows stabilization. And understand this clearly. Once DNA expression shifts past a certain threshold, reversal doesn't occur. You can still visit old patterns, but you can't live in them anymore. They no longer feel like home. The body won't support sustained incoherence. This is the true awakening point. Not when you understand something, but when your system refuses to pretend otherwise. You are crossing from effort-based living into alignment-based living, from managing reality into inhabiting it. The pressure you feel is not asking you to act. It's asking you to allow the final consolidation to complete. Because once it does, your role clarifies completely. Not as someone searching for purpose, but as someone carrying it. And that realization brings us to the closing phase, the mission that emerges naturally when consciousness crosses a quantum threshold and never fully returns to the old speed again. You can feel it now, the way reality no longer rushes you the way it once did. Even when life moves quickly on the surface, something inside you remains steady, anchored, present. This is the signature of a crossed threshold. When everything slows down, it's not because time has weakened. It's because you've stepped outside its grip. Your consciousness no longer collapses reality by reflex. It witnesses, it listens, it allows. And in that allowing, a new function emerges, not imposed, not assigned, but revealed. Your mission is not to escape the world. It's to move through it as a stabilizing force. You are here to demonstrate what coherence looks like in motion, to walk through uncertainty without needing to resolve it prematurely, to stand inside complexity without fragmenting, to let your presence do what words never could. This is how evolution actually advances, not through declarations, but through embodiment. As timelines continue to diverge around you, you'll notice that some paths simply stop appearing, not because you're restricted, but because your awareness no longer resonates with them. You don't fight the old world, you outgrow it. And what remains is quieter, clearer, more precise. You may still feel moments of intensity, waves of emotion, bursts of change, but beneath them, there will be a stillness that doesn't leave. That stillness is not absence. It's command, not dominance, but alignment. You've become the kind of observer who doesn't need to interfere to influence. And this is why your consciousness slowed when it did. Speed collapses possibility too quickly. Slowness allows higher order patterns to form. You needed to decelerate to cross the quantum threshold safely, to bring your body, your awareness, and your identity with you intact. Now, the world will test this coherence not harshly, but gently. Small invitations to rush again, to react, to doubt. Each time, you'll feel the difference immediately. Incoherence will feel loud, heavy, unnecessary, and you'll return to stillness without effort. That is mastery. Your life ahead is not about seeking awakening moments. It's about living from one, letting your choices arise from clarity rather than fear, letting your timing emerge from attunement rather than pressure, letting your presence do the work you once tried to force. You are not meant to carry answers for everyone. You are meant to hold a frequency. And that frequency, the one you're stabilizing now, will quietly alter everything it touches. Families soften, systems bend, conversations open, futures reroute. Not because you tried, but because coherence invites coherence. This is the evolution humanity is moving toward. Not louder consciousness, but deeper consciousness. Not faster progress, but truer progress. Observers who can slow reality enough for wisdom to catch up. You crossed the threshold the moment you stopped racing time and allowed time to reorganize around you. From here on, life doesn't accelerate. It aligns. And this is the truth that completes the transmission. When everything slows down, your consciousness isn't falling behind. It's stepping into its rightful place, beyond the loop, beyond the rush, beyond time itself.